Raw shellfish is often on the foodborne illness outbreak list. So that's one that should be, definitely limited or avoided because it is a higher risk food. You can eat it cooked. So I think there's a lot of confusion there. Whenever people say avoid raw shellfish, people are like, oh, just forget shellfish altogether. But people really like crab and lobster and scallops and, these shrimp. So as long as these items are cooked, you can enjoy them.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning into this episode of Mom Talks with Christa. I'm your host, Christa, and I am so excited for today's episode. We have Ryann Kipping here today, who is a Master of Public Health and a registered dietitian nutritionist. We get a lot of questions in the group and on Instagram about nutrition while you're trying to conceive and when you are pregnant. So she was our amazing expert. I actually found her scrolling through reels one day. She has really helpful reels to see as well. So definitely check her out. But before we get to that, I want to read the review of the week. This is from CT Anu. She says, I love Mom Talks with Christa. Every episode has so much useful information. It has been a great resource for my second pregnancy, as well as for my postpartum. So excited it's available as podcasts. There are so many topics like gestational diabetes, baby-led weaning, postpartum care, choosing right breast pump, breastfeeding, which has helped me clear a lot of doubts and gave useful tips. So that's awesome. Thank you for the awesome review. And if you guys have found any of these episodes helpful, please leave a review. It helps out the show so much. So just a quick announcement before we get to the interview as well. So I know by the time this comes out, the timing will be a little off, but tomorrow I am hosting our monthly Facebook room, and it's just this really cool thing. And we do once a month in our Facebook group. So if you're not a part of our Facebook group, definitely look in the show notes. There's a link to it there. It's called the New Mom Breastfeeding and More Support Group by Mommy Knows Best. And in this Facebook group, we try to be a little different than your average Facebook group. We do monthly virtual meetups and give you a chance to connect on different levels. So I know motherhood can be very lonely. A lot of the moms we talk to don't have family or friends nearby. So it's a great time to connect with other moms. So check out our Facebook group. We have over 20,000 moms now, which is pretty incredible. And we do our monthly virtual meetups, which is really awesome. You also get to know about product opportunities first, launches, beta tester opportunities, and so much more. And then finally, after that, we do have a peanut pod we do with the Peanut app. And so that is the first Thursday of every month. I have different topics that we kind of just discuss as a group. So if you want to check that out, you can check out the Peanut app and join our discussions there. And one final thing, at the end of this, we are going to be giving away a beautiful mama bracelet to one lucky listener. But you have to keep listening to hear the code word and how you can enter to win that bracelet. So stick around for the end of the interview and you'll see just how to enter. And now enjoy our interview with Ryann Kipping. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. I am so excited for today's interview. We have Ryann Kipping here, and she's a registered dietitian and a master of public health. And we are talking all about preconception and pregnancy nutrition. So all kinds of questions that we get here at Mommy Knows Best in our Facebook group. So I just can't wait to dive in and talk further about what people can be eating and doing in this time of their life. So thanks for being here.
Yay. Thanks for having me. So excited.
Yes, I'm really excited. So first, just to get started, can you just tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Like you said, I am a registered dietitian nutritionist, also have a master's in public health that I just recently completed. Very excited about that. And I am a registered dietitian specifically for those who are trying to conceive and pregnant, helping them sift through all of the information that is online today. I think nutrition is already really confusing, even if you're not pregnant or trying to conceive. And then when you throw this journey into the mix, it gets even more confusing. There's so many people telling you different things, so much misinformation out there too. So my whole mission and goal is just to make sure you guys feel confident, that you know what you're doing, and also that you're getting the most up-to-date information for this journey, because obviously I'm a little bit biased, but I think that this time in your life is the most important time to focus on nutrition. And not that I always worry that when I say that, people think like, oh, I have to be perfect about nutrition. So Not by any means. It is not about being perfect at all. It's just about making those small changes that I'm sure we'll get into some of those things in a minute here.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's great to know too, because I think you mentioned too, like sifting through all the information. I mean, there's so much
Yeah.
information out there right now. I mean, we are in the time of information overload, as I like to
Yes.
say. So I think it's awesome to have experts on here and really talk about, because I think when people start thinking about trying to conceive, they look online and they're like, this blog
Yeah.
says this thing, this blog says this thing, or
Yes.
they come across. So to kind of, let's start with talking about preconception. So
Sure.
do you count this as kind of the time before you're like, okay, I'm going to start trying to conceive soon? So like kind of those kind of pre-weeks or those discussion with your partner at that time, like when do you kind of consider preconception?
Yeah, I really consider it any time leading up to that positive pregnancy test, honestly. So I have a lot of friends and a lot of followers that are planning their pregnancy out pretty far in advance, which I think is fantastic. I'm definitely someone who is in that boat too. My husband and I are like, okay, we're going to have kids in like 3 years. Like we're going to try on this state. Like, not really. I'm just like making a joke, but like if we could plan it that much, we probably would, and a lot of times you can't plan these things. You can't plan when you're going to get pregnant, all of these life events. It's really hard to plan. But if you do have a general idea of like, okay, we feel like maybe in the next 2 years, maybe in the next year, maybe in 6 months, like whenever you know that you have kind of set that timeline in your head, I consider that like you're in the preconception phase, right? That's a great time. If you're a year out, great time to take that year to focus on nutrition, start building in some of these healthy habits, because nutrition habits and healthy habits, they can take a while to like make them into a habit. It takes a lot of time to change. So the sooner you can start, the better. And you'll feel more confident typically the sooner you can start making these changes and maybe meet with, a specialist or whoever you feel like, whatever area in your life that you feel like needs more work. Hopefully you can find someone to work with, work on those things to where you do feel very confident and ready. With that being said, if you're only 3 months out, if you're only 2 months out, that's still great. Like you still have time to kind of think about some things, hopefully implement a few changes and get ready to go. Like anytime preparing is great.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's kind of like as soon as you're kind of having that talk with your
Thought.
partner, whether it's
Yeah.
years down the line or months, to kind of make some of those shifts in your diet and nutrition.
Yeah.
So when it comes to women that are starting to, trying to conceive, like at that point, how do you recommend they change up their diet, or what are the kinds of foods that you first recommend they kind of start putting into their regular diet?
Yeah. Well, the good thing about preconception is that there's no like air quotes, like food rules that you have to follow, right? Like we think there's so many rules in pregnancy that we have to follow. There's nothing like that really. There's no, like you don't have morning sickness in the way. Like typically you don't have like these pregnancy symptoms to deal with. So you're just like, you're like unstoppable kind of like you have all of this power to make changes. And granted, you might have other health conditions that you're dealing with and things like that. And that's a great point. If you have a pre-existing health condition, I think that's a great focus, is to try to manage that existing health condition to the best of your ability, right? Go to your doctor, tell them you're trying to conceive. Are you planning to start trying to conceive? What are the steps you should be taking to make sure you're managing this condition as best as you can? But if you don't have a healthy existing health condition, I think overall just focusing on what you can add to your diet, right? Because a lot of the times when we think about making dietary changes, we're like, all right, I need to cut the alcohol, cut the sugar, cut the dairy, like we think we all of a sudden have to like cut all of these things out of our diet, which ultimately makes eating miserable. We don't want to, like, it's like, okay, this isn't fun anymore. I can't enjoy my life. I can't go to social gatherings and, enjoy food with friends. And that's really not the case. You want balance. A lot of dietitians preach this, and for good reason. We have to have balance or else it's not going to be sustainable. If you start making changes and then 2 months later, 3 months later, you're like, oh, forget it. This is too hard. I can't keep up with this. Then what was the point to begin with, right? So again, focus on what you can add to your diet, which is usually more leafy greens, more foods high in folate, more nuts and seeds, more fish. Like a lot of people struggle with fish intake. So focusing on fatty fish consumption, thinking about where your protein's coming from, thinking about where your sources of fat are coming from. I find that a lot of people are not getting enough healthy fats, especially when trying to conceive, working with women, you know, in all stages of trying to conceive, those who are just planning, have never even tried before, and those who have maybe been trying for a couple of years and haven't had success. Both groups, I feel like, need to work on fitting more healthy fats in their diet, really because we've been taught to avoid fat for so long. There was that whole low fat era in our lives where mainly in our parents, you know, that people that age are like, it was so rooted in them that like we had to pick low fat everything, which later science has like disproven time and time again that this isn't true, right? We need fat in our diet, and especially for pregnancy, we need that fat. So healthy fats, folate rich foods, nuts and seeds, thinking about where your protein's coming from, and fish. I'll just leave it at that. There's so much more, right? But
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's helpful. And I love that you say adding stuff to your diet instead of taking away, because that is so common. I mean, even outside of trying to conceive, people are like, I want to lose weight. So I want to cut this, and this.
Yes.
Looking at like, what do you consume though? What are the things that, you know, give you that healthy protein, healthy fats? So that's awesome. And so when it comes to, so you kind of talk about getting the folate, which I know, you know, you get those in sometimes like prenatal vitamins. So when do you recommend women to start taking prenatal vitamins? Is that like once they're pregnant, or do you recommend sometimes in that preconception phase at all?
Most of the time in the preconception phase. And that's, you know, for a few reasons, several reasons. One, definitely building that routine, building that habit. Like I was just talking about with other dietary changes. If you've never taken a supplement or a multivitamin before, maybe you've never even taken like a pill before consistently, it can be a challenge. Like this is something I have to work on with my clients, is like, how can we make sure you're taking this every day? You know, it can really be a struggle for some people. So building that habit, again, if you've already built it up before you're pregnant, once you're pregnant, you're going to be like, oh, I do this every day. This is part of my routine. It's no big deal. Number two, when you hit that first trimester, just eating can be hard. Like literally just eating anything can be hard. But if you've done that work, you know, during the preconception phase, you've really worked on building up those nutrient stores, your body knows what to do. Like our bodies are so amazing. It's just going to pull on those nutrient stores you built up during preconception. So that's another reason, you know, taking a prenatal vitamin can be beneficial, is working on those nutrient stores. And then the first few weeks of pregnancy, going back to that first trimester, that's when a lot of the major organs, they start to form and they actually finish forming in that first trimester. So it's really, really important that during that time, you have everything baby needs to, you know, develop these important organs. Of course, this is going to be individualized. You know, you might be someone that, you know, I've worked with people who don't prefer not to take supplements, or just want to kind of figure out individual micronutrients to take versus just like, you know, taking a overall prenatal vitamin. So it's going to depend on the person, ultimately, what you need to supplement with, what prenatal vitamin you might need. If you need to add extra, you know, maybe you need a prenatal vitamin, but you also need to take additional vitamin D. That's really common. So yeah, if you are starting to think about having a baby, it's probably in your best interest to try to find a prenatal vitamin. And you might go through a bunch too to find one that works for you, because sometimes people will try one and be like, made me really nauseous, or, you know, there's just sometimes there's unwanted side effects, especially if you start one that's like a really high dose too. So it might take some time for you to find something that you can make into a habit,
Yeah, I've even found that with some multivitamins I've taken, I'll feel like kind of sick to my stomach after, before kind
Yeah.
of getting used to it or something. What are the biggest differences then in diet between preconception phase and pregnancy phase? Like, what are the biggest things I should change?
Really, it's the same. The same foods that are going to help you get pregnant are going to help you stay pregnant and have a healthy pregnancy. You might just need to, as you go throughout pregnancy, eat a little bit more. Definitely, you're going to need more protein as you go throughout. But in general, like the foods that you want to focus on are going to be the same when you're thinking about trying to get pregnant. When you are pregnant, right? A lot of the same foods you want to include that I already talked about are still foods you want to put emphasis on. There are some nutrients before pregnancy and first trimester that are really involved in building your baby's brain and spinal cord, like folate and choline. So those are two that you could put emphasis on before trying to conceive in the first trimester. As you go throughout pregnancy and looking at like closer to the end, third trimester, DHA, and that going back to those fish, those fatty fish, those are super important in the third trimester because they're super good sources of DHA, which is rapidly involved in accumulated in your baby's brain in those final stages. So there are some, nutrient changes as you go throughout the trimesters, but in general, the same foods, are good throughout that whole journey.
I know we talked about like the elimination thing, but what are some key foods
Yeah.
when you are pregnant that that women should avoid?
When you're pregnant, obviously alcohol is like the number one thing you should avoid. Unwashed produce. So making sure that your produce is super thoroughly washed is really important. In that same food safety realm, unpasteurized dairy should be limited or avoided. The good thing there is that most dairy in the grocery stores is pasteurized. So there's really not much you have to limit in the means of dairy, unless you shop a lot at farmers markets or maybe you live on a farm or something. Most dairy is completely pasteurized, including soft cheeses. So mostly you can eat all the dairy, like honestly, and it's pretty easy to check. You just flip the label over and it should say pasteurized right there. Shellfish, so that we have to mention that one. So raw shellfish is often on the foodborne illness outbreak list. So that's one that should be, definitely limited or avoided because it is a higher risk food. You can eat it cooked. So I think there's a lot of confusion there. Whenever people say avoid raw shellfish, people are like, oh, just forget shellfish altogether. But people really like crab and lobster and scallops and, these shrimp. So as long as these items are cooked, you can enjoy them. Just making sure to avoid the raw ones is best practice. Deli meats, that's another common one. I'll make sure to hit on that too. This is like a long conversation, so I'm trying to figure out how to like sum it up. There are ways you can make it safer, right? I have people all the time that really crave sandwiches or like their favorite food is a sandwich. And I don't want to be the one to be like, oh, well, you can't eat sandwiches for 9 months. Like that's miserable if you can't eat your favorite food for 9 months. So get the sandwich toasted, heat the deli meat before eating it. There are ways to make it safer. And then on top of that, so deli meats carry listeria and you get listeriosis from if you ingest listeria and it's harmful. So this is very rare. Listeriosis is very, very rare. I don't have the number off the top of my head. I have posted it a lot on social media. The numbers definitely in some of my social media posts about how many cases there are a year in America, but it's actually pretty rare. That is not to downplay the seriousness at all. If you do get listeriosis when you are pregnant, it is very serious if you do get it. That being said, it is very, very rare. And our food supply in America here is safe. Like it's very safe. Ultimately, it's up to your comfortability level. If you feel like or if you are someone who is a very anxious person and you feel like if you eat a sandwich and after it, you're going to be like, oh my God, freaking out, feeling so guilty and just going down this downward spiral, then you should probably not eat it, right? Because our mental health can be so affected, and it really matters. So if you are going to have sort of like a mental health spiral, then that's someone I would say like, hey, just avoid it. It's not good for you to have these guilt trips and anxious feelings. But if you feel comfortable, you feel like, hey, like I've done my research, I feel comfortable with the restaurant that I'm going to, or I'm making it at home and heating it, or whatever it is, then I think it's totally okay.
Awesome. Awesome. It's really good to know. Is there like a common, I know we hear a lot of times, like a lot of women or people in general are deficient of like vitamin D. I know a lot of people need to take vitamin D. So is there like a common thing that you see a lot of women or pregnant women are deficient in that they should definitely look after?
Yeah, definitely. Vitamin D is a huge one. I think 50% of us are, I don't know if it's everyone or just pregnant women. Now it's escaping me, but I know definitely at least 50% are deficient in vitamin D, and then even higher number, some people are even critically deficient, which is like just meaning your vitamin D is so low. I don't know the exact percentages, but they're pretty shockingly high. So most prenatal vitamins, they don't contain even like 1,000 IUs. They'll contain like 600 IUs or 400, somewhere between 400 and 1,000. I feel like is pretty common. There are some out there that contain 2,000, 3,000, even 4,000. So these are great. Most people do need at least 2,000 IUs of vitamin D. The best way to know, though, is to get your vitamin D levels tested. This is a relatively easy test. And also the supplementation, vitamin D supplementation is also relatively cheap. So it's easy to test, easy to correct, yet so many of us are deficient in it. So that's an important one. Choline, it's estimated that greater than 90% of pregnant women aren't getting enough choline. So that's one that's super important. In general, just like working one-on-one with people, back to the folate thing, I think a lot of us are under consuming folate too. And this is folate from like natural food sources, because folic acid is the synthetic type that our foods are fortified with. So I'm talking foods that are naturally high in folate, like leafy greens, nuts and seeds, avocados, lentils, things like that. I feel like women aren't consuming enough of. And then I'll also say omega-3s too. I touched on that some, but omega-3s, I think we're also under consuming for how important it is also in pregnancy. These are just a few. There are definitely more.
No, that's super helpful to hear, just because, yeah, that's one of those things where, you hear about deficiencies that you didn't even know about. I remember hearing about the vitamin D one, and I heard recently too, like magnesium, a lot of people are, deficient in. So
yes.
People can start kind of planning now. I think that will help. And I actually saw on your page, and this was so interesting to me, so I was hoping you could expand a little bit more on it, how you don't recommend pregnant women to take TUMS, because a lot of pregnant women do get heartburn. And so I kind of wanted to hear a little bit more about that, and then what you kind of recommend for natural remedies for heartburn.
Good question. And this is so funny because I talked about it in stories, on my stories and Instagram, because I don't know if I was getting a bunch of questions, or I can't remember what sparked this. But yeah, so I just went on stories and I was like, talking about TUMS and this information. And I got such a response. Like everybody was like, oh my gosh, like I've never heard this before. 1, 2, this is so incredibly helpful. Like I was just told like TUMS are safe, sent on my way. And now I've been like popping 8 TUMS a day. I would have never known. Like, this is crazy. And then I also had a bunch of people that responded and were like, oh my gosh, yes. Like I know people that got kidney stones during pregnancy, some of my friends, because they were eating so many TUMS that it caused kidney stones. So, or other issues, right? Because TUMS have calcium. So that's one of the reasons. And we need calcium. Calcium's great. We definitely need it during pregnancy. If you don't consume dairy, you might be under consuming calcium. So that could be a benefit of TUMS, but it can also be a downside, as I was just explaining with some of these issues that you might run into if you get too much calcium. Additionally, so kind of going back, TUMS work by decreasing or neutralizing the acid. in our stomach, right? Because that's what causes heartburn or acid reflux, is that acid in your stomach coming back up your esophagus, which causes that burning sensation. So TUMS are basically neutralizing this acid or decreasing it so that doesn't happen. So that's why they work. And not by any means am I saying you cannot use them. I know that sometimes heartburn is just so bad you can't sleep at night because of it. So this might be the only thing that works for you to get sleep or for you to go about your day. So I 100% understand that and am not saying you shouldn't use them or that they are harmful, right? Because they are safe to use. So let's just get that out of the way. But we already have the issue of potentially too much calcium. The next thing is that when it neutralizes that acid in your stomach, we need that acid there. We need that acid for two reasons. One, foodborne illness, which we just finished talking about. So that acid actually protects us and prevents us from getting sick, right? It helps us fend off that potential bacteria that we might have consumed that was in our food. And then number two, that acid actually helps us absorb some nutrients like B12. It helps us absorb those nutrients. So if we don't have that acid there, then that's basically kind of interfering with the normal pathway of how we absorb nutrients. So 3 reasons why they're not ideal remedies for heartburn and why we should try some other things first before we're just like, oh, go get the TUMS, like I have heartburn, there are definitely a lot of other things you can try. Number one is finding what is causing it, right? Because if you know what's causing it, you can hopefully limit that food and that can kind of stop the heartburn. Keeping a food diary can help this. So writing down what you ate, writing down your symptoms to figure out what the heck is causing this heartburn. And sometimes it's not a specific food. Sometimes it's maybe like eating too much at one time, right? Because if we overdo the portion size, I do this too, like I'm not pregnant, but this happens to me. I eat too much at a meal and I get heartburn. So sometimes that causes it. Sometimes just laying down, we eat dinner and then we get on the couch and we watch Netflix, right? So laying down right after you eat is just gravity. It's like helping that acid go back up your esophagus. So that sometimes can be a cause of it too. Figuring out that trigger though, I think is most important. A lot of people were commenting on this thread too, other things that help them outside of TUMS, which I love. Dairy kind of works both ways. Sometimes dairy is the cause of people's heartburn, but sometimes milk, like a glass of milk, really helps people's heartburn. So I have plenty of clients who what worked for them is like drinking a glass of milk after they had dinner. They're like, it helped, or yogurt. Sometimes people eat yogurt after a meal, great little parfait or something for your dessert. You get tons of nutrients from yogurt. I love yogurt for pregnancy. So that's something you could try. Teas, there's herbal teas like ginger tea, chamomile tea. Some of these can help with heartburn too. Small frequent meals. So that goes back to the large meals. If that is your trigger, then maybe figure out a way to break up some of your meals and do, 6 small meals as opposed to 3 big meals. Going on walks, instead of lying down right after you eat, go on a short walk. I mean, even if this is like around your house, it's getting cold some places I know. So if you can't get outside, then just walk around your house for like 10, 15 minutes, or at the least when you go to the couch, sit up straight, work on your posture. Posture definitely matters too for our digestion. So make sure you're sitting up straight. Even at work, if you're eating breakfast or lunch at work and you're going to sit at your desk after, or even eating at your desk, definitely work on your posture, sitting up straight. That can help your digestion. There are a lot of things you can try for heartburn. But like I said, if it's so bad and none of these things are working, and TUMS is the only thing, or another medication, right, that your doctor may have prescribed. Not saying these are bad, not saying these are harmful. Sometimes they are necessary, but I would try some of these other things too. Sorry, long-winded response.
No, that's great. No, because I think a lot of people want to hear those kind of natural remedies or things they can do before, popping something quickly. So that's a great alternative as well. No, this is awesome. I think, we get a lot of questions about, people that are trying to conceive and how they can, change up their diet or what things to look for. So this is really helpful. And I know we're just about, at the end here. I just had a couple of final questions for you. I always ask these, to everyone that comes on the show. It's kind of a fun thinking question, I call it. So if you could have a billboard made today where you could share one tip with moms everywhere, what would you have it say?
Oh my gosh, you even sent me this beforehand and I did not think of anything. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I think it would just be to listen to your body. Your body best, really tuning in and listening to what it has to say, whether that is in regards to a certain food, that your body needs, or you feel a certain way that you need to contact your doctor, or you feel like your doctor is telling you something and you're like, I don't think that's right, or that's not what I feel, then your body best. Listen to it, tune in and hear what it has to say.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice because as we were kind of talking about earlier, there's a plethora of information out there. And I think it's so important to see information, understand information, and then see how it applies to you because I think so many people just take it and well, this is what worked for them, so it's going to work for me. And it's that's
exactly. Yep. 100%.
Awesome. And so, of course, where can everyone find you on Instagram? I know that's how I found you and saw your awesome reels. They're full of information, so you guys definitely have to go check her out. Any Instagram links or any downloads or things they can check out?
Yeah, definitely. So come see me on Instagram at Prenatal Nutritionist. I am also on TikTok and Facebook as well, a little bit less. But yeah, TikTok, Instagram at Prenatal Nutritionist. And then we also have a specific page for our membership and app, which is at the Prenatal Nutrition Library. So pretty much daily information on both of these pages. I would follow both of them if you really want to dive in and get learning. You can also download our app for free, which is the Prenatal Nutrition Library in any app store. So would highly recommend downloading that as well.
Awesome. Well, that was great. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing all the info with us. And definitely go check out her page, guys, because that's how I found the reels. I came across it one day and I was like, these are awesome. They're so informational. And yeah, I was just really cool. So thank you so much for coming on. It was great meeting you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that awesome interview with Ryann Kipping. Go check out her Instagram, Prenatal Nutritionist. And like I said, I found her based on her reels. And if you just want some quick, awesome information, go through all of them. They are very entertaining and also informational. So you'll feel like you learned a lot after watching them. Definitely check it out for anyone who is trying to conceive or about to be in that point where they're thinking about having a baby. Okay, so I promised you guys first a prize of the week. But before we do that, I want to read off some of these mom confessions we got this week. And as a reminder, you can submit your mom confessions to us on Instagram. You can also email them to me directly, Christa at Mommy Knows Best. Just put the subject mom confession. All confessions stay anonymous. We started doing this in our Facebook group actually as a way to vent, get things off your chest, because I think a lot of times we hold on to things or something funny happens. We want to share and relate with other moms. So we do this as a fun way to kind of connect, maybe laugh at ourselves a little bit and just kind of have some fun. So here we go. I'm going to read a couple of these mom confessions today. This first one says, I throw out any presents my kids get that make too much noise or a mess, like 500-piece puzzles, drums, or make your own bracelets with 1,000 beads. Okay, I can kind of see why you would do that. If anyone else does this, let us know in the comments. I think this is, you might be onto something. I have heard of people doing this with certain battery operated toys that will talk in the middle of the night. So it's been done before. Okay, next one. My kid thinks it's normal to change clothes in the middle of the day because that's what my husband and I tell them we're doing when our bedroom door is locked. Okay, well, you know what? There are worse things that your kid could be doing in the middle of the day. They're just changing their clothes, it's fine. That's a great way to cover it up. All right, let's see. Let's find one more. Let's start with 3 for this week and we'll get some more going next week. I recently poured some bubble bath that hardly did anything. And I was like, this brand sucks. I'm never buying it again. Then my 10-year-old pointed out that I'd bought regular bubbles for blowing. I think we've all been there before where we bought something and not fully looked at the label. We just kind of trusted our instinct. And yeah, it kind of failed. So it's okay, guys. We're doing this as a way to see that, what? Mistakes happen. It doesn't make you a failure as a mom or a person. Things happen. And it's okay to go back and laugh at them because you know what? No one got hurt in the meantime. It's funny. So awesome. We are trying to do these every single week. So as a reminder, you can send all your mom confessions to me. All right. And then as I said in the beginning of this episode, one lucky listener or watcher is going to get our awesome mama bracelet. So the code word is purple. So if you watch this episode, comment below purple on YouTube or IGTV, and we're going to pick one lucky winner to get the mama bracelet. So that's all I got for you guys this week. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Mom Talks with Christa. As a reminder, every episode comes out every Wednesday. We also have it as a podcast on IGTV and so much more. And of course, if you found this or any episode helpful, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps the show so much. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good one. Hey guys, if you found this or any episode of Mom Talks with Christa helpful, please like, comment, subscribe, and of course, share it with your friends. We release new videos every single Wednesday, and our new podcast is out every single Thursday. So lots of different ways you can catch us. And of course, if you're not following us on our socials, go ahead and follow us there. We've got tons of new content for you every single day. And finally, if you're watching this and doubting yourself, you're doing a great job. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.